from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national, happy to be here. It's truly a pleasure, an honor, a blessing. And if you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, we are live, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you. The phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And we're covering a number of stories tonight. We're going to talk about a number of topics and get a lot of reaction from you all, we the people, when you call in for Open Phone America. But I want to start with this possible extended network that's being reported by the FBI. The FBI announcing that, in fact, there may have been more people involved in this. And this is interesting, right? Because we didn't know about that on Friday, and a lot of people making a lot of claims about that on social media. I'm talking about the assassination on Charlie Kirk. So the director of the FBI, Kash Patel, as well as the deputy director, Dan Bongino, have been in the media just trying to make sense of what's going on. But the latest report that I've seen, it indicates that Mr. Robinson, the assassin, Tyler Robinson, had been messaging his friends on the messaging app Discord. Now, obviously, this is a big deal, and I think we have a clip of FBI Director Kash Patel talking about this, as well as Bongino giving a follow-up. So let's start with number 10, if we can.
We flexed all resources the FBI had and surged multiple air assets as soon as this shooting occurred. We were cycling in agents, evidence response technicians, hostage rescue technicians, and special operators in and out of Utah, cycling evidence back and forth on these FBI planes as soon as we could so that there was no delay. And what we did, once I got there, along with the deputy on the ground around 5 p.m. local on September 11th, was walk the entire crime scene, including the foots the suspect himself took. And what we learned was there was evidence, DNA evidence, that could be collected and had been collected, including a screwdriver that was found on the rooftop. Also, we went over to the scene in the wooded area where the firearm was discarded, and the firearm had a towel wrapped around it. It's important. I'll get back to that later. I even walked into the wooded area in the ravine, so I knew from my investigative experience what I could bring to the table and what decisions I needed to make. And having the support of President Trump and the full support of the White House was what we needed for these resources to happen. And I can report today that the DNA hits from the towel that was wrapped around the firearm and the DNA on the screwdriver are positively processed for the suspect in custody.
So again, that is the director of the FBI, Kash Patel. And according to the Washington Post, Mr. Robinson, the assassin, messaged his friends about 2 hours before the FBI says that he was taken into custody, saying, "Hey, guys, I have bad news for you all. It was me at UVU yesterday. I'm sorry for all of this." A member of the group of individuals who allegedly received the message from Robinson took a screenshot shot of it and shared it with the Washington Post. In addition to Robinson's alleged admission, Breitbart News reported that FBI Deputy Director Bongino spoke to Fox News' Bill Hemmer earlier today, and he said that people knew in advance of the Kirk assassinations, the plan for this assassination. Now, you combine that with a story, and again, they're not necessarily related, but I guess tangentially they are. there was a singer named Sky Valadez, a transgender singer, who wrote a song, Charlie Kirk Dead at 31, and another song called Charlie Kirk's Death Is Not Enough for Me. And these two songs were released in August on the website SoundCloud. Bizarre stuff, right? So clearly a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but a group of people that were, actively hoping that Charlie Kirk would not be around. Why? Because he was effective. Why? Because at least this individual, was transgender and didn't like what he said. What's funny about this, and not funny, but, funny, not funny, haha, is I've never thought about assassinating someone that disagreed with me. Perhaps I'm the only one, but I don't think I am, right? I can't imagine. Let's say you're straight, right? Let's say you're straight, heterosexual. Imagine being heterosexual and or wanting to hurt someone because they were because they didn't believe. Like let's say somebody says, "I don't think you should be straight." You people are, we've heard that argument here on this program. There are people out there, activists and whatnot, that'll say things like, "Look, you've been conditioned since you were born with Barbie and Ken, with men's room and ladies' rooms, with boys and girls, with all sorts of traditional gender roles. So you're brainwashed. Of course you can't accept transgender," right? This is the argument that they make. And just imagine if they were to go off and say, "But being straight is wrong, and you shouldn't be straight. And here's why being straight is wrong, because it brings too many kids in the world," or whatever argument they make. Would that make you want to hurt them? Because I find it ridiculous. And I just go, "Ha, ha, ha, what, another crazy," right? Because I think that's a crazy argument. But this person clearly was motivated to hurt somebody. And again, the reports that came out on Friday, or on Saturday, might even have been Sunday, excuse me, with this gentleman, I keep saying that because I forget his name, Tyler Robinson, the assassin. He is apparently dating or living with a companion that is transgender. So, interesting stuff going on. By the way, Deputy Director Bongino observed that, quote, "There appear to have been multiple warning signs. There were people in the suspect's network, family and friends, who had stated that he had become more political. I believe some of his coworkers stated that he had kind of detached himself when the topic of politics came up and walked away from them." I hope that's not a warning sign, because I typically do that off radio. I could care less to get involved in political discussions, honestly. But and I'm not looking to hurt anybody, I promise. Crazy stuff that's going on. We're going to keep you up to speed on this tonight. We're going to get various perspectives on all of this news from a retired FBI agent, as well as from the spiritual perspective, as well as from you all, we the people. So don't go anywhere. I want you to keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
My 17-year-old niece left for Europe to go to college. And while she was packing, her mother, Amaryllis, my daughter-in-law, noticed that she had put a Bible in her suitcase. And Amaryllis was curious about it. And she asked her, and Zoe said to her, "I want to live like Charlie Kirk."
That, of course, is Secretary RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., at the Charlie Kirk Memorial Service tonight at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. And there were a number of people that spoke there. We'll bring you some more audio from the vigil and the memorial that was held there this evening. But I want to get, I guess, the clinical perspective, right? Because, We keep talking about the political aspect of what's going on and how people are angry and how people are upset and how people are recoiling at some of the vile things that we're hearing. But we're not having much conversation about, what the next step is. And, over the weekend, I made some comments about this being a Romans 12 moment for America. And I hope that it is. And I hope that, like Charlie Kirk, we repay evil with good. But there's nuance to this, and there are moving parts, and there's a lot of differing opinions. So I want to speak with somebody who specializes in trauma and tragedy and PTSD, and that's Dr. Tim Murphy. And Dr. Tim Murphy's a licensed psychologist. He's also a former United States congressman and a Navy veteran, and he's the author of the book, The Christ Cure, 10 Biblical Ways to Heal from Trauma, Tragedy, and PTSD. Dr. Murphy, welcome back, sir.
It was great to be with you. Thank you so much.
You bet. So I want to get, your take on this. I know that this has been a trying couple of days for a lot of people, both that knew Charlie Kirk and those who didn't, and those who are kind of finding themselves in the fold now saying, I'm not sure what side of this I'm on. Should I be celebrating the death of this evil fascist as he's been portrayed falsely by the media, or what? Do I reject it? Dr. Murphy.
Well, these are very trying times for us. Whether one knew Charlie Kirk directly or through his work, it can still be, and it is, a very traumatic incident for us. So not just for those who were there, because trauma is being witness to part of a life-threatening traumatic event, or it could also happen to someone you care deeply about. Certainly, we're familiar with that term for soldiers in battle. Well, it also happens to policemen and paramedics and firefighters. But what about the rest of us? Well, about 70% of the population at some time will have a major life-threatening event to us, or to someone that we know and care about. And so this certainly falls into that category. And then what are the reactions? Well, when we have a traumatic incident occur to us, there's the immediate things. It's almost like a flashbulb memory. What were we doing at the time? How did this hit us? How did it affect us? We can remember sight, sound, smells, taste, touches of the event. But what happens next is we do this constant videotape replay of what occurred over and over and over again. And each time that happens, our body and brain are reacting. I want to describe a little bit of this. So there's a part of our brain that sets off this chain of events. We're aware of adrenaline running through our system, but it also sends off these stress hormones, cortisol, cytokines. It gets the heart pumping, it gets you breathing fast, it changes the way your blood goes through your system. And so the part of our brain called the amygdala sets off this alarm. Something terrible is going on, and we get ramped up with that. But as the specific traumas died down, that is those who were there, what happens is we keep replaying that memory, and our brain each time reacts similarly. We're upset. We got to protect ourselves. Now, every time we do that, our body is saying out more of these things which weaken us, which weaken our immune system, which make us ache, and give us sensations of depression and anxiety. Now, add to that then, in this case, the loss of someone who was near and dear to us, whether we knew him or not, or knew his message. And it is a great deal of grieving and mourning that we have in a situation like this. We're saying this was someone meaningful to us. This was someone that was a guide. He was our beacon in the darkness. I like the idea that people who never heard him before are now listening and say, wow, this is pretty good. But there's something else that's happening here which makes it even tougher, and you alluded to it, and that is the comments that people are making. Mm-hmm. We recall when our veterans came back from Vietnam, not only was it an unpopular war, but it divided the country. Demonstrations and riots, one side against the other, and people didn't trust the media, didn't trust politics, and people were saying, I need someone I can trust here. But where it really hurt was the veterans when they came home, them thinking, I was just doing my duty. Patriotic American, I went there and fought for my country. I did those things. When they came back to the United States, they were spit on. Many of them just took off their uniform, threw them away at the airport, never put it on again. We're called baby killers. And so what happened was, in the midst of them already struggling with trauma, to be attacked. And now we see, I don't want to totally equate this to Vietnam veterans, but it's what happens after a trauma. When you blame people, when it provokes anger and attacks, and people thinking, no, this was a message of caring and love and hope, And now other people are using it as a catalyst to spread more hate, the very thing that Charlie Kirk fought against, that our nation should fight against. And so that adds to our struggles and our trauma and our weakness, if we let it. Anger is one of those reactions. Short-tempered is one of those reactions. Struggling in our relationships, having trouble with sleep. I'm sure a lot of your listeners will say, yeah, I've been having trouble sleeping lately, having trouble concentrating at work. That's the whole brain reaction to trauma that we're going through. But what we got to do is to say we can't remain in that state of perpetual hyper-alertness and worry. We've got to transform this into a meaningful and powerful tool. I like that you referred to Romans 12, but there's also something in Romans 5. This verse says, and it sounds paradoxical. It says, not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. In other words, we have a lesson here from Paul, and that is, let suffering give you meaning, and learn the lessons of perseverance. Let it build our character, but don't go to what you refer to in Romans 12. Don't repay anyone evil for evil. Do what is right in the eyes. That is where we have to go. That is part of the healing process. And in my book, which you referenced, The Christ Cure, which I was just the fingers on the keyboard. This is inspired by the Holy Spirit, because I'm not a biblical scholar, but it was written for a time such as this to help us heal and understand that we have to go in the direction of several tasks we have before us now. It is building on our own strength and not succumbing to weakness. It is being self-disciplined and not being disorganized, which we can become after a trauma. It's I'm going to choose courage instead of fear. I'm going to fight and persist and not quit. It is very important we surround ourselves with a team, with a community, at a time when we feel like, I just want to be alone. I don't want to be around anybody. That's not healthy. We have to be vigilant to our soft spots, so otherwise we're vulnerable, and know that. But then these key things, we have to choose hope over despair. The other side wants to weaken people to say, well, despair, you've lost your leader. Give in to hurt. And we have to say, no, I'm choosing healing. I'm not choosing hurt. Just like in the Gospel of John, when Jesus came to the waters of Bethesda, and there's a man lying there who had been lame for 38 years, and Jesus said, hey, do you want to walk? You want to be healed? And the guy said, oh, you have no idea how tough my life is. No one will help me. I go down to the water. This is miserable. And Jesus said, pick up your mat. Go. We have to have that kind of determination. No, I'm going to heal from this. Yes, it hurts, but I am going to heal from this. I am not going to give in to this. And I have to build on my own faith and not doubt. I have to trust God and trust other people around me, find a team of people who trust. And then this other step, which is really important, if you really want to heal, and noting that people with post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic events, those who do best in healing are those who have religious practice, not just a believer, not just kind of a fuzzy, ethereal, spiritual thing, but really a religious practice, because that's where you're with a community of people in worship, in prayer, and have a mission. This is really important, to have a mission going forward. And that's what we should be seeking.
Amen to that. Dr. Tim Murphy, licensed psychologist, former United States Congressman. I want to kind of pick up from there and follow up on that, because I think that's a really big component of the healing moving forward, and a follow-up also on what you mentioned in Romans 5, because I think that's the moment we're at right now. And we're going to do that straight ahead. Folks, we're coming right back with Dr. Tim Murphy, licensed psychologist, former United States Congressman, author of The Christ Cure, and me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
I'll never forget our first tabling campus event. It was in Portland, Oregon, so you know where I'm going with this. You may have seen the video, Charlie Kirk wearing an ice hat, sitting at a table with a sign that read, there are only two genders. As I sat there next to him, student after student approached the debate, often with heated emotions, but Charlie remained cool, calm, and logical, and one by one, no matter how controversial the question was, he would dismantle them with his reasoning. And that's when I realized something. Charlie Kirk did need college. College needed Charlie Kirk.
That, of course, Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. And Congresswoman Luna, prior to being in Congress, was herself a contributor with Turning Point USA, very active across the country, and sharing some words there at the Kennedy Center at this evening's memorial for Charlie Kirk in Washington, D.C. And I want to come back to our guest. Of course, your phone calls are welcome. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And I want to continue our discussion with Dr. Tim Murphy, who's a licensed psychologist. He's a former United States congressman, veteran of the United States Navy, and the author of the book, The Christ Cure, 10 Biblical Ways to Heal from Trauma, Tragedy, and PTSD. And Dr. Murphy, before the break, we talked a lot. You shared a lot of really, really valuable information. And I guess part of what I wanted to follow up on was you talked about, both the pastoral care part of it, as well as the clinical, care part of it, of healing and getting past this. I'm going to call it collective trauma because the country's kind of going through it together. But there's also, I think, collective grief, right? Where people who may have known Charlie Kirk and people who don't know Charlie Kirk are grieving just the same way. And it's affecting them very deeply because he was such a public figure. And I guess they feel so intimately intertwined with his persona. And I think we've seen that in the past with other celebrity-type figures, but we haven't seen a gruesome assassination like this, this magnitude, in a very long time. So what are, I guess, some of your tips, advice, recommendations for those that are listening to get past this?
Well, grieving is an important word here, and understand that one of the stages of grieving is anger. It's a shock and disbelief, and anger is in there too. People try and bargain. People may ask questions. Well, they probably are asking questions like, how could God let this happen? Why is mankind so cruel to each other? What can be done? And there are a number of things that we can do practically to prevent these things from happening. Again, we recognize that with the internet gone wild and people can find hate groups and cheer each other on, people just start cheering each other on through this and provoking these things. Didn't happen. We have a technology world that has that. But some of the antidote for this is don't get sucked into the technology world. Don't go and just try and find the most bizarre things and go down those rabbit holes of things that are getting you more churned up and angry. The reason this book of The Christ Cure is written, it's very different from anything else. I actually track a lot of the traumas of the life of the Apostle Paul and say, well, here's a guy who was beaten with rods 3 times, lashed with a whip 5 times, 39 lashes, stoned and left for dead, stranded out in the ocean. The list goes on and on. And so why didn't this guy have PTSD? He should have had all the symptoms of insomnia, broken relationships, alcoholism, but he didn't. And it was because he understood that all that suffering was small in comparison to Christ. But if we look at our own suffering first and say, oh, how can I get out of this? I feel miserable. I'm never going to amount to anything. And I say that too because many in your audience have had trauma in their life, totally independent of this, but this may bring back flashbacks of trauma. And the idea is just to have the humility to approach this and say, I cannot get sucked into the arrogance of self-pity. My life is terrible. This makes it worse. Yeah, I get that, and we need to acknowledge that, but we need to pull together and move on. One of the things that you have the benefit of doing is you have a mission. Right? So your mission is to get people to think, to provide information for them, and that's an important mission. Regardless of how you feel someday, you've got to get up and do a show. Well, It's helpful that other people see that as well, that they choose a mission. Maybe for now their mission is, I'm going to go to church. I'm going to reconnect. I'm not going to be silent anymore when someone insults my faith. I'm not just going to go along with jokes when someone insults Christianity, but they can go along with everything else. To stand up for things, to be willing to talk about those things in a positive way. But where Paul did this, and I should say, the field of psychology, really, half of the psychologists out there are atheists or agnostics. They don't want to talk about biblical things, and that's a shame because most people do. But what Paul had here, I'm going back to Romans 12 again, brilliant quote there, when he said, love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. And here it is. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Boom, mic drop. This is what we need to be doing in our own hearts. Say, what is my personal mission? This is a moment when I can choose to just crawl back in that hole, to be like the lame man at the waters of Bethesda and complain I can't do anything. You're saying, no. This guy, he knew he was running a risk. He got killed for standing up these principles. I can't let this happen again. And hey, look, even Jesus only convinced 11 out of 12, right? And as soon as his mission became clear, they crucified him. Well, for us, it won't go that far, but understand that people can't sit back anymore and let messages of hate and distorting our Constitution and those things, we can't let them go on anymore. I look upon the way some of these messages came through with this young man. I don't know if it's totally true, but we're talking about here is someone who really got into the toxic darkness of the internet. And he had a transgender roommate or whatever. But think about this, Rich. The last 10 years or so, men have heard the message over and over, toxic masculinity. Boys are bad. And so boys say, well, okay, well, I guess I don't want to be bad. Or white privilege. So people say, gee, I don't want to be, I'm embarrassed about being white. Instead of us celebrating our differences and bringing us together through that, the whole message that kept coming through is people are evil, people are bad. No wonder we have boys growing up with no self-esteem, look down upon themselves. They feel the world's against them. No wonder the majority of adolescents, young adults feel depression, anxiety. No wonder so many are turning to marijuana, by the way, which provokes a lot of psychotic symptoms and depression. Well, this is a turning point. We say, can't do that anymore. Get back to the basics, which have worked for thousands of years. It's not old. It's new every day. And this is where using these psychological principles of refocusing our life, building on our strengths, and doing practical things like getting out, exercising, getting sleep, eating right, being around other people. All of those are powerful. So those are the kind of things we got to do. And I don't usually say this because you're gracious enough to have me on, but I wrote these things with the guidance of the Holy Spirit in the book, The Christ Cure. It takes psychological principles, biblical principles, brings them together in a nexus to say, in a moment of trauma, this is how we build our resilience, this is how we build our resistance to trauma, this is how we recover from trauma, and this is how we transform our life to be stronger than we were before and a better human being. And this is a moment when we have to do that.
Outstanding. Dr. Tim Murphy, licensed psychologist, former U.S. Congressman, and the author of The Christ Cure, 10 Biblical Ways to Heal from Trauma, Tragedy, and PTSD. If you want to get a copy of Dr. Murphy's book, I recommend going to wherever you get your books and getting two of them, one for yourself and one to give away. Again, the book is called The Christ Cure, 10 Biblical Ways to Heal from Trauma, Tragedy, and PTSD. Doc, for people that are listening to this saying, you know what, I love this guy, I want to hear more of what he's got to say, where do you send them? Where do they go? How do they follow you?
Well, I have a website, which is drtimmurphy.com. That's drtimmurphy.com. I've got some past podcasts on there I recorded. I put some blogs in there. I'll be getting back to that because I'm involved in a massive project the last year doing some recordings. But they can reach me through that website, drtimmurphy.com. I always welcome people's comments and questions about some of these issues, particularly if they have questions on the book. Please reach me. But my book, The Christ Cure, it's a handbook for the broken and those who love them. So even if you feel you're okay, if you know someone is struggling with this, I recommend read the principles in there, understand them, help other people heal. And I'd love to hear how it's working for everybody there. So drtimmurphy.com.
Well, you know, Dr. Murphy, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you sharing and not holding back tonight, because I've spoken with other professionals, MDs, like psychiatrists, and they've gone on to say things like, you know, medication can be a help, but the main thing you have to do is the talk therapy, right? And you're talking about the talk therapy, but saying that can be helpful, but you also need the pastoral care, the spiritual component. And I think that's truly the holistic way, right? You really can't treat
Right.
just the mind without treating the soul for people to be wholly healed. So it makes a ton of sense to me. Again, the book is The Christ Cure, 10 Biblical Ways to Heal from Trauma, Tragedy, and PTSD. Check out the website, drtimmurphy.com, drtimmurphy.com. Dr. Murphy, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Thanks for being here tonight.
All right, thank you so much. God bless. I appreciate all you're doing.
You bet. Thank you. Godspeed. And amigos, we continue with your calls, your thoughts, your reactions, and more straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back, America. I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And I want to get to your thoughts, your calls, your reactions on everything going on. Of course, we continue the coverage of the aftermath of the assassination of Charlie Kirk, as well as other things that are going on today. In a little bit, I'll give you the scoop on the latest drug boat that El Trompito has bombed. And I saw another video today. Just blew this thing out of the water. They claim it was a drug boat coming from Venezuela, from the Maduro regime. So good on the U.S. for doing that. But I want to get your thoughts, your calls, your reactions. Let's do it. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to John calling us from San Diego, California, streaming the show, richvaldez.com. Go right ahead.
Hey, I got a couple things. Like the black guy that murdered that white Ukrainian girl, Aryan Nations put a hit on him. I saw it online. We're going to write him a letter and try and make him get all scared and get himself killed in prison. And then the guy who murdered Charlie Kirk, we got his address, actually. Because, you know, they got these crazy women that write these convicted murderers and stuff, and they say that we love you and blah, blah, blah. Well, we can also write him a letter, too. So we're going to try and just make him feel really crappy as hell as long as he's in prison. We're going to, you know, put some pressure on him. So I'm putting that on Facebook and X, putting the address of Tyler Robinson at the Utah County Jail.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think everybody knows where he is. It's been widely reported. They also reported that he's being held in like special custody to keep him alive, to protect the guy so that he gets his day in court. So, I mean, part of what we just spent the last half hour, 40 minutes talking about, and I think the big response that the nation faces collectively is we've been faced with an act of terrorism, with an execution, with an assassination, with literally a civil war that's being waged by the most radical elements of the left. And I think the question that falls upon us, John, is how do we respond to that? How do we react? Do we say, you know what, we're going to forget about Jesus, we're going to forget about the gospel, we're going to keep it back to the Old Testament, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, and I think that would be insulting to Jesus, right? What on earth did Jesus shed his blood for, but for us in order to have that type of forgiveness? And moreover, what did Charlie Kirk stand for? You know, so to repay evil with evil, I think is not the answer, as we've kind of been talking about, like I said, the last half hour, 40 minutes. I think no matter where these people end up, they're going to get the justice that they've earned. And ultimately, it's our job to do what's right for tomorrow. It's our job to do what's right for ourselves, for our families, for our neighbors. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to live in a vindictive country, right? It's okay to have discussion. It's okay to get angry, like the Bible says. Be angry, but sin not, right? You can be upset with the things that you disagree with. But ultimately, I just don't want to live in this world where oh, so you don't like what I have to say, so you're putting engraved things to kill me, and my people are going to come back at you, and who wants to live in a perpetual war? That sounds like the Middle East. It sounds like Gaza. Nothing I want any part of. I like the good old U.S. of A. where everybody runs around buying whatever car they want, buying whatever house they want, saying whatever they want, making fun of whoever they want, and everybody seems to get along just fine. And I get that they crossed the line. Now it's time for us to use, the good, right? Repay the evil with good, with the justice that we have, with the system that we have, and allow that to do what it's got to do. Because otherwise, we are the left. Otherwise, we are the bad guys. Otherwise, we are the assassins. And that's not who we need to be. John, thanks for your call. I appreciate it. Shout out to everybody in San Diego, California. And amigos, I'm coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Thanks for what you do. You have so many people. You ask the questions that if a viewer had a microphone, they would ask that question, and you seem to always ask it right at the right time. So God bless you, my friend.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, so we're keeping track of everything that's going on. And again, the latest on this is the killer, the assassin, Tyler Robinson, says, "It was me." There's investigation going on into whether other people knew. Obviously, he was talking to somebody on this social media app known as Discord, messaging others, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. Discord claims to be cooperating with the investigation, although some are skeptical as to whether they've cooperated from the very beginning. So we'll get a little better understanding of that from our discussion with former FBI agent Baker, who will be with us. But the bigger issue here is, I feel, and listen, I'm dealing with this as much as you are, right? People are coming at me with a lot of nonsense, goading me into reacting the way they want me to react, just like they do on the radio, right? People call here all the time trying to get me to say something, or trying to get me to respond to something, or trying to start asking me a series of questions as if, it's their show instead of mine. And I resist the bait often enough, because you have to. You have to fly above the fray. You can't take the bait. Sometimes I take the bait, because it's harmless. But in a situation like this one, I think there's harm. We can't become assassins, right? They start killing us. You can defend yourself always. And I always recommend a vigorous self-defense. But the best thing that we can do is what Charlie Kirk told us to do, what Jesus told us to do. Take it for what it is. Paul, Boise, Idaho, streaming the show tonight, richvaldez.com. Go right ahead.
Thanks for calling on me, Rich.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, about 4 days ago, I don't know if you recall, but the space station was put back up into the orbit by the Russians. And coincidentally, about the same time, there was drones that landed in 7 different provinces, including Poland. And I
remember,
find it ironic.
The drone issue. You're saying there might be a connection between the two.
I think that's where they came out of, was out of the space station that used to be called Mir. That's what the name of that station
I'll be honest
was.
with you, I don't know anything about it. And whenever I have questions about that stuff, I either call on my former astronaut guest, Charles Camarda, or on Lohmeyer, and he's back. He's back at Space Force, running the show over there. So working in the administration. So we'll see who we can get that might have some good answers to that. But Paul, thanks for the call, brother. I appreciate it. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the program. We're back for another hour. We're live and national. 833-482-5337 is the phone number, 833-4-VALDEZ. And just a little while ago, Washington, D.C., Kennedy Center, they held a vigil, a memorial for Charlie Kirk, a number of individuals speaking there. I'll play some clips of that in a little bit. But really beautiful words, just remembering his life, his legacy, his work, and how passionate he was in doing all of those things. I also want to give you a little update on what's going on in the New York City mayor's race, obviously probably the biggest race in the country right now, besides the New Jersey governor's race and I guess the Virginia governor's race. And the latest, the governor of New York, who was vacillating on endorsing anyone for mayor, Kathy Hochul, she replaced Andrew Cuomo. Remember, she was lieutenant governor to Andrew Cuomo. And she was chosen after Andrew Cuomo's lieutenant governor had to resign in disgrace because I believe he got indicted, right? I think that's how that story goes. Anyway, Kathy Hochul decided to endorse the socialist Zoran Mamdani in the New York City mayor's race. Check this out.
Governor Kathy Hochul made it clear in her opinion article in the New York Times released Sunday night who she believes is the best choice for mayor of New York City. The question of who will be the next mayor is one I take extremely seriously and to which I have devoted a great deal of thought. Tonight, I am endorsing Assemblyman Zoran Mamdani, said Hochul. She went on to add that making New York more affordable was a primary joint goal between the two, also saying, Zoran and I don't see eye to eye on everything, and I don't expect us to. I will always reserve the right to disagree honestly and to argue passionately, but I also believe that New York State and New York City are at their best when we stand together against those who attempt to tear us apart. The endorsement comes as a recent New York Times Siena College poll shows Mamdani widening his lead in a four-man race. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo coming in second, followed by Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa, and Mayor Eric Adams rounding out the set.
So again, Hochul doubling down for Mamdani. I guess she no longer has faith in her former boss, good old no cash bill, Andrew Cuomo. So what does this mean? Well, I don't know if it means a lot. I don't know that Hochul is a powerful force of vote getting in New York, but they're Democrats, and Democrats have a electoral advantage in New York. That goes without saying. I mean, at least in New York City. So where does that put us? Well, I think, again, this puts us in the same place we've been in. The polls, despite going up and down, have pretty much remained the same. The facts have not changed, right? These are the facts. Andrew Cuomo, failed governor of New York, resigned in disgrace, who was likely going to get into some sort of heat. The person who oversaw the deaths of senior citizens after he put COVID-infected patients into nursing homes, who then got the old people sick and killed the old people, to the tune of 15,000 senior citizens dying because of his executive order to put the COVID-infected individuals in nursing homes because they were running out of hospital space. This guy, who is also the guy who signed into law in 2020 the no cash bail, right? Meaning you can do what you want, strangulation, attempted murder, all these different things. You're not going to be held on bail. You get a ticket and you get out. He signed that at the state level. He's the one who picked the stellar lieutenant governor that he picked, who got in all sorts of trouble, and then picks this woman, Kathy Hochul, who turns around and endorses his competitor, who trounced him, by the way. And that's the other fact I want to mention. So Andrew Cuomo already faced off against Mamdani, and he got the tar beat out of him. So what ends up happening here is Cuomo loses to Mamdani in the actual Democratic primary. The current mayor of New York, who's overseen all of the destruction we've seen, the Roosevelt turning 5-star hotels into migrant shelters, women getting set on fire in the subways, the crime that they say is going down, but all you got to do is take a walk in the street to see that that's actually not a thing. All of that, this guy's been polling at 7 or 8%. Who's that? That, of course, is the current mayor of New York City, Mayor Adams. So now you've got 3 guys that support sanctuary cities, 3 guys that are happy to raise taxes, 3 guys that have been soft on crime. At least 2 of them have been soft on crime. One is claiming to be soft on crime because he wants to defund the police, Mamdani. And somehow there are people out there that say things like, oh, there's no way Curtis can win. How on earth, if there's 3 guys that are almost identical in their communist sympathy, and you have one that isn't, how is it that the one guy isn't going to be the spoiler vote? Just do the math. Right now, I'm not saying it's a guaranteed thing. This is politics. Nothing's a guaranteed thing. Not a single thing. Not Trump 2020, not Trump 2024, not Trump 2016. But I'll take the odds. Right? Trump did well in those elections, despite all the polls saying Hillary was going to beat him by this much, and Hillary outraised him by that much, and Kamala raised $1 billion more, and blah, 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 right? All that stuff that was said, none of it mattered. Because ultimately people said, you know what, I got to live in this country, and I like El Trumpito, so I'm voting for him. Others said, I don't like El Trumpito, and I'm not voting for him. And then yet another group of others said, I don't like El Trumpito, but I am voting for him because he's way better than the others. And I think people realize Trump had the best common sense policies. Well, guess what? When you've got 3 guys that are shouting at the rooftops to raise taxes, to not police the streets, and to make New York and continue it being a sanctuary city, you've got one guy that stands a chance to get all of the votes of people who don't want to vote that way, right? The anti-vote will go to Curtis. The Republican vote will go to Curtis. The MAGA vote will go to Curtis. So it's still beyond me why El Trumpito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th president of these United States, my favorite president, Donald J. Trump, El Presidente, why he's not solidly behind Curtis. Now, I understand he said on Fox News he thinks he's a lackluster candidate. I would urge the president, Mr. President, please reconsider. While you're going to be in D.C. making America great again, while you're in Mar-a-Lago, while you're wherever you're going to be, while you're in Trump Tower, the rest of us have to be here in the New York area. And I don't want to live with Andrew Cuomo as mayor. I don't want to live with Eric Adams as mayor. I don't want to live with Zoran Mamdani as mayor. And Curtis Sliwa sounds like a breath of fresh air. Anyway, El Trumpito weighed in on this stuff. He was on the Fox News channel, and he had a new nickname for Zoran Mamdani. Listen to this.
Mr. President, see these buildings? A lot of them in New York City you built.
I do.
That's called capitalism, not socialism. We have Mamdani, who is ahead in the polls here. What's your reaction?
It's amazing.
It's up by 20.
I call him my little communist. He's my little communist mayor. But, you know, he has to come to Washington for money, a lot of money. And it's amazing. I was so surprised by this. Even the other 2 candidates, I mean, you know, you look at the candidates. Now, maybe one-on-one somebody could beat him, and I'm not looking at the polls too carefully, but it would look like he's going to win. And that's a rebellion. It's also a rebellion against bad candidates, okay? It's a rebellion. They're tired of it. You know, they're seeing things happening. We have taxes being put on us in New York by Democrats that are so bad that even the Democrats are revolting. It's not possible for a Democrat to lose. Right. I did, you know, in the presidential election, I did great in New York. I did great, considering it's New York.
Considering it's New York.
I mean, I did great. But there's a lot of question on the voters, on the booths and everything else on the votes. But we should never be in a position where we're talking about a communist.
We shouldn't be talking about a communist. Absolutely. There's no need for it. What's important here is that we pick the right person to be mayor. That person, in my opinion, is Curtis Sliwa. Anyway, I want to talk about the latest on the FBI's investigation. There's reports now that are coming out this morning. Dan Bongino on the Fox News channel indicating that others knew about this plot. There was a back and forth on the Discord app, messaging app that the assassin was using, and we're going to get some reaction to that from our guest that's scheduled to join us in a little bit, former FBI agent Baker. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
right. But you're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Did anyone in that crowd aid or assist this assassination?
Well, that's what we're looking into now, Bill. Obviously, we have a suspect in custody. It's quite clear. It's why I'm here discussing this individual. However, if this was a larger effort, there was any aiding and abetting, whether it be financial, whether it be someone who knew the specifics of it and failed to report that. As you heard the director say this morning, we as an FBI, our team, along with our state and local partners, are looking into that. We have a lot of technical capabilities, a lot of good investigative capabilities, where we can scrub that entire network, whether it's OSINT, open source intel, through social media that people posted publicly. We'll be looking at that. We'll also be dropping a lot of paper, a lot of subpoenas out there to take a look to see if there was any extended network. But I want to be clear, there are things I can say, as you well know today, and things I can't. I don't want to get ahead or jeopardize the investigation. But when what I can share with you, Bill, I will. We are clinging to transparency here. This is the era of the, Cronkite and Jennings generation is over. New media now is media. And we want to be sure we can do everything in our power and do everything in our power.
That is the Deputy Director of the FBI, Dan Bongino, on the Fox News channel, discussing the FBI investigating the possibility of individuals in the crowd assisting with the assassination of Charlie Kirk by the suspect that they have in custody right now. Tyler, I forget his last name right now, the killer. Anyway, absolutely terrible stuff that's going on here. Tyler Robinson. I want to bring in our guest, Thomas J. Baker, former FBI agent and the author of The Fall of the FBI, How a Once Great Agency Became a Threat to Democracy. Agent Baker, welcome back.
Glad to be with you again, Rich.
Yes, sir. My pleasure. And you just heard Deputy Director Bongino talking about the possibility of an investigation into people in the crowd. And I've seen over the weekend so many different videos of individuals that could be making innocuous gestures, fixing their sleeve, rubbing their arm, or hand signals. People think that these are hand signals. One of them was the bodyguard that's almost in every single frame where you see Charlie Kirk in any video. There's a guy behind his back with sunglasses on. So one of his main security guys. And he's one of the individuals that are being cited in this, which I think is a little far-fetched. But what do I know? Then there's another individual who's an apologetics coach. The guy is a theologian. And people are saying that he's involved. And there's some other guys in the crowd. And there's all sorts of internet sleuths out there saying there was assistance from the crowd. And I could see, if you don't know who these people are, how they could make a compelling argument about this. It is the internet, of course. But what can you tell us about what you've heard and your thoughts on the latest updates in this investigation?
Well, as for what Dan Bongino said and the people in the crowd,
yes, a lot of people have to be looked at. A lot of people have to be eliminated, but it's not going to be just limited to those in the crowd there that day. There's the whole circle of the associates, friends, and contacts of the shooter, and his online contacts and friends, most definitely. So there is quite a lot to be done, which is being done. And of course, there's a fairly good abundance of physical evidence, forensics. They have recovered the rifle. I'm told that, of course, we know the ATF will trace where the rifle was purchased and who the previous owners were. They'll be able to tell, and I understand they've already found DNA on the rifle. I think they'll be able to find fingerprints on the rifle. So there's a lot of physical evidence, and that all has to be looked at. And this is like most major investigations and most recent investigations of assassinations, assassination attempts, and similar. It's a cooperative effort, and the state and local police are doing an awful lot of the work, as well as the FBI and the other federal agencies.
Yeah, listen, I'm with you on that one. I think we need to get as much evidence as we can. Now, based on your experience and your time in the Bureau, even though everybody's working at, breakneck speed, I'm presuming it takes a good amount of time to get a lot of these things going because there's so many moving parts, no?
Yes, absolutely. I think you do know, because I think we've talked about it before, and I have a whole chapter in my book about it. I was the FBI agent in charge of the immediate response to the Reagan assassination attempt. Yes. Now, in retrospect, one of the fortunate things about that, the shooter was apprehended immediately on the scene, and there was never much doubt about who the shooter was. In the following hours, in a matter of hours, we determined what the shooter's motive was, to our satisfaction anyway. But the other thing that did go on for a long time, which was not that publicly obvious, was to determine if he was involved or anyone else was involved in his conspiracy to assassinate the president. It turns out nobody really was, but that had to be looked at. That took a lot of time and a lot of backtracking of all his travels. And I assume that's going on with the shooter now in Utah. All his past travel and contacts are being looked at. This will probably be tried in local court. As everybody has repeatedly said, in Utah, they have capital punishment, and this is certainly worthy of that. So that'll be considered and done. And if it's a local case, in almost all local jurisdictions, there's two additional sets of charges: accessory after the fact and accessory before the fact. So it's people who may have helped this guy beforehand, or people perhaps, and I don't think there's anyone like this involved, or I think we might be able to say this already, who helped him after the fact in conceal evidence or assist in his getaway. Now, a couple of people like that in the Boston Marathon event did come to light and were prosecuted, so that could happen here.
Very interesting stuff. Amigos, we're on with former FBI agent Tom Baker, and we're going to continue this discussion on the latest in this investigation with Agent Baker when we return. Plus, your calls and more are coming up. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
Look at Rich Valdez. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Now, the suspect in the deadly shooting of Charlie Kirk is not cooperating with authorities. That's according to Utah's Governor Spencer Cox. Over the weekend, Mr. Kirk's widow, Erica, gave a tearful address in which she thanked first responders for their efforts and vowed that her husband's voice will remain. Well, let's cross over to the United States to talk to Niall Stanage, who is the White House columnist for The Hill. And the death of Charlie Kirk continues to reverberate across the US. We're now hearing he's not cooperating with the investigation. What's the latest that we're hearing across the United States?
Well, you mentioned Spencer Cox, the governor of Utah, who also said that the suspect in this case harbors leftist ideology, but then went on to add that the motivation precisely for the killing of Charlie Kirk is not clear. So that's where things stand in terms of the investigation. Of course, the suspect will be entitled to his day in court and to try to rebut any charges. More broadly, there has been, I think, a push from President Trump and from others on the right to try to take punitive action against people who are perceived to be celebrating Kirk's demise online. That in itself is very controversial, partly because of the United States free speech protections and partly because of the idea that this is a partisan push from the right to punish people on the left and the fear that that may become a wider dragnet.
There's a little bit of a leftist commentary from BBC News. We rarely play BBC News here, but we had a little bit today, and that's Niall Stanage, or Stanage, however you like to say it in British. But anyway, that's the latest there. I think Governor Cox was right. It is not right-wing ideology to become a transgender. It is left-wing ideology, and that seems to be playing a part. The FBI hasn't called that the motive yet, but they have alluded to the fact that this person, the Tyler Robinson, the assassin who's in custody now, who's not cooperating, is someone that was living with in a relationship with a transgender individual, a man trying to become a woman. So I want to continue this because I'm not sure how important it is for the suspect to cooperate or even to confess with the amount of evidence that they have. But again, there has been plenty of other leads that have come into the FBI with Mr. Robinson posting on Discord after the assassination saying, "It was me. Sorry, y'all, bad news. It was me in Utah." So at UVU. I want to get a reaction to that from our guest. He is the author of The Fall of the FBI, How a Once Great Agency Became a Threat to Democracy. Former FBI agent Thomas J. Baker, who, as we mentioned before, was one of the agents in charge of the investigation immediately following the assassination attempt on former President Reagan. Agent Baker, welcome back.
Nice to be with you, Rich.
So,
even on that occasion.
Yeah, I agree. A sad occasion it is. And this is really interesting stuff because my knee-jerk reaction when somebody says lone wolf attack, I tend to think that's not always true. I think it's hard enough for me to go to the store and buy something if I'm having a barbecue, right? Without somebody at home texting me, "Oh, don't forget the napkins. Oh, make sure you bring a bag of ice," right? There's always extra people involved in the simplest of things, not let alone this type of very intricate plot where you have a 22-year-old kid going on top of a roof, taking a pretty long-range shot, doing all sorts of things. And again, I think the shot is a possibility, and I see that how that was a vulnerability in the security. But it just leads me to think there's got to be more, or am I wrong?
You're not necessarily wrong, but maybe there is no more. But I think in this case, they have to continue to look who may have helped him before or after the fact. I think the fact that he's not talking is not surprising. And of course, he has the constitutional right against self-incrimination if he clams up now. And in most criminal investigations at this point, that's where we are. The defendant or the accused, if you will, is not cooperating, is not talking. I think something you mentioned earlier is pertinent, and our society as a whole, not just law enforcement, has to look at this. But the fact that this guy's involved with a trans person or a trans lifestyle, only a few weeks ago, the person who shot at the Catholic school in Minnesota was a trans person, killed several children. It's a terrible thing. And a year earlier, it was a trans person that attacked the Christian school in Tennessee. So that's something that has to be looked at. I think many of us, in general, perhaps not those on the left, would consider any trans person to have a degree of mental illness. It's you're uncomfortable with who you are yourself. Now, some people don't want to look at that or don't want to consider that, but I think that's part of the big picture.
You know, Agent Baker, I think you're right. And, you know, over the weekend, there was an article in America's oldest newspaper, the New York Post, reporting that the assassin was cohabitating with a boyfriend who's in transition to become a girlfriend, and that this individual was, you know, identified as transgender and was cooperating with the FBI. And when I shared the article with no opinion, I just shared the headline and the article. And one of my former colleagues took exception to it and said, "Rich, you have to be effing kidding me. You're now blaming this on transgender people." And I wrote back, "No, I'm not. I'm merely A, sharing an article, and B, trying to see if, you know, there is even a remote connection to other trans killers that have been out there." And you mentioned several. There's others that weren't involved even in anything even remote to that. There was one that killed a Border Patrol agent earlier this year who was part of what they self-described as a trans death cult. They call themselves the Zizians, Zizians. I may not be saying it right, but they follow this guy that his last name starts with Zi, and they've become followers of his, calling themselves Zizians, Zizians. And these Zizians, if you will, they're trans and they're anti-fascist, left-wing, almost militia, if you will. And to me, this is a real thing. I don't care if there's 5 of them or 15 of them. To me, it seems like a growing problem that could potentially be a trend. It seems like there are multiple instances of trans and violence. There was an instance in I forget what state that was, Minnesota, I believe, 3 months ago, where somebody who identified as a conservative Christian assassinated a Democrat in the state house there and her husband and injured another lawmaker. So the media tries to put this as, well, there's violence on both sides. And while that may be a true statement in and of itself, it really is an imbalanced one because there's very few incidences of that and plenty on the other side.
Well, you're exactly right. You're absolutely right. And this trans mental illness is part of a cluster. They're just one cluster of a group on the left-wing whole constellation who repeat a lot of hateful things about people on the other side, about people like Charlie Kirk and about the president and others. And they use this terminology that's totally inappropriate. I think some of the leadership, like members of Congress and such, who might call somebody on the right Hitler or a Nazi or a fascist, I think they know that that's not true. But this cluster of people out there, among them the trans, but other people too, who are mentally not 100%, can be influenced by that. And quite frankly and quite sincerely, historically, if you really believed that your country was coming under the grip of a Hitler or a fascist and did something about it, you could have a clear conscience. And we look back at now in the early or the mid 30s, the late 30s, the early 40s, there were a few people in Germany and in the occupied countries who resisted to the death and used assassination to fight Hitler. Well, that was the real Hitler. And these people who are labeling people, especially someone like Charlie Kirk, Hitler, are just so out of order. If I may,
yes,
I don't claim, like so many dozens of people we've now heard on television, claiming to be a good friend of Charlie Kirk, but I did rub shoulders with him a few times. 5 and 10 years ago, he came to Aspen, Colorado, where I have a second home. And I was fortunate enough to be at one fundraiser he had. There were about 40 or 50 people there in a large home. And I spent a lot of time with him that evening, and my wife and I both did. He was very calm. He was younger then, of course. He was very calm. He was very cool. He was very cordial, and he advocated not calling our enemies names. He advocated dialogue and free speech, and that was his repetitious theme. And then after I published my book, he had me on his podcast, on his radio show podcast, for about an hour. And once again, no surprise, he was very, like you are, free to give me time to give complete answers to all his questions. And then he came to Aspen just 3 weeks ago, and it was very surprising. In his previous visits, he never had security with him. And on this visit, and you mentioned the man standing behind him, but on this visit, he specifically mentioned that for the first time, he was beginning to become concerned about his security. That was in response to a question, but it just shows you how the times are changing, and it's unfortunate because Kirk was never a hate monger. He was always reasonable, and he always was an advocate for free speech.
Yeah. You know, you said it better than anybody else could have, Agent Baker. The truth is, they picked the nicest guy of the bunch, really, to try and, you know, paint him guilt by association, right? Because they've spent the last 10 years painting Trump as Hitler. They figured, hey, anybody in that orbit is you know, collateral damage. And I think this is, yes, heated rhetoric, and people could say what they want about it. I agree that it's something we should discontinue. But free speech is free speech. And, you know, kind of like Voltaire, I support everybody's right to free speech. I don't support anybody's right to assassinate people. Agent Baker, thank you so much for joining us tonight. The author of the book, The Fall of the FBI, How a Once Great Agency Became a Threat to Democracy. Agent Thomas J. Baker, let everybody know how they follow you, and any final words.
Oh, the book is available on Amazon, Amazon.com. That's where most people get their books. It's also on Barnes & Noble, and it's also I have a book site, thomasjbakerbook.com, thomasjbakerbook.com. Rich, thank you very much, and thank you for all that you do.
Amen, brother. God bless you. Thank you so much for being with us. I'll be calling on you again soon as this stuff continues to unravel. Thomas J. Baker, former FBI agent. Godspeed, sir. Amigos, we're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. And you sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Of course, we go to the phones now. Open phone across America. Open phone America, age-old thing here. This is a tradition that has been going on for a lot longer than I've been around. And we get to do it together tonight. I want to hear your thoughts on what's going on the news of the day and everything else. We're live. We're national. Probably, I think, one of the only shows in this time slot that's live and national. So 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to Santo calling us from Washington, D.C. on WMAL. Go right ahead, sir. Do we have Santo? We do not have Santo. Well, anyway, while we work on getting Santo back, I want to go back to something that Agent Baker said. Something that Agent Baker said was that there's a lot of people out there trying to claim different things about Charlie Kirk, right? And what I said too, right? There's a lot of people in the media trying to make it seem like violence is a problem on both sides of the aisle. And I want to make it clear that I don't believe that violence is a problem on both sides of the aisle. I can't remember the last time I heard of 6 or 7 or 10 people committing acts of assassination, right? Killing people in the name of MAGA, right? It doesn't happen. Even that case in Minnesota, that had nothing to do with MAGA per se. The guy just happened to be a Christian minister that went and, killed some politicians, and it's a horrible thing. I don't condone it in any way. But it wasn't like he was taking aim at the at their way of life, right? He had a beef with these particular politicians, and even if it was on Democrats at large, right? I still say it's wrong, it's bad. We don't do that. It's not open season on Democrats, right? They're the ones that made it open season on conservative Republicans. So I don't ever endorse that. But the mere suggestion that because you've had rhetoric, stupid, inflammatory rhetoric in the past from people that have called individuals that have called Donald Trump Hitler and now maybe are allied with him, this doesn't give any license or any credence to the idea that there is actually some sort of balance to the idea that there is this type of violence, at least to the same degree, on both sides of the aisle. That's just a farce. And I don't want anybody to think that that's actually true, right? Because it's simply not. So the reality is that there is a growing radical fringe element on the left that is becoming increasingly violent. And they shout in people's faces, and they knock MAGA hats off of your head, and they're in your face, and they shout you down. And just today I saw a woman, a young girl, probably 19, 20 years old, on a college campus in Texas. She started screaming, your man is dead, your man is dead. They shot him in the head. It was horrible. And she was dancing and jumping around, and she got in the guy's face, and he pulled out his camera, and she's like, get your camera out of my face. And she's like, I'll tell you this and I'll tell you that. And it's this whole ugly thing. And then ultimately what happens, she hits somebody, right? She touches them the wrong way. She assaults them. The cops are there, and then she gets arrested. She'll turn around and say she got arrested because she's a woman or because she was a woman of color. But ultimately she got arrested because she broke the law. And notice how it wasn't the people with the red hats breaking the law. And that's the point that I'm making. Right? It's one thing to share your free speech, and it's another thing to go out there and break the law. And it's clear which party embraces the law breaking. That's just blatantly clear. I'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, to the phones we go. Rich Valdez, live and national. Let's go to John in Dallas, Texas, calling us on KLIF. Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you, Rich, for taking my call. Your guest, what was your guest name you had on a minute ago?
Agent Tom Baker.
Tom Baker. So he wrote a book, and
you got to get straight to the point. The music's about to kick in.
All right. He didn't mention corporate prayer and fasting, and that's what's going to bring revival to the church and to the nation.
Yeah, well, this is a very good idea. Prayer and fasting is always the answer to every problem when you're looking for a biblical solution, and I appreciate you mentioning that. John in Dallas, Texas, KLIF, prayer and fasting. I agree with you, brother. Amen to that. We have a few folks online, more calls straight ahead. Stick with me. We'll be right back momentarily. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, back for another hour. It is 7 minutes past the top of the hour. We're live and national this Monday night. Give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4 Valdez. Going to get to your calls momentarily, but I wanted to start off with, again, some of the headlines we've got. The mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, still hasn't dropped out. The competitors remain the same. The governor of New York has endorsed Mamdani. And again, no surprise, but she kind of, it was, some people were speculating that she would be with Cuomo, since she was the lieutenant governor to Cuomo and became governor because he had to resign in disgrace as a result of a sexual harassment lawsuit. And instead, she went with Mamdani. And again, I think a lot of people are trying to go with Mamdani because he's polling better than the other two guys. Makes sense, right? You've got Andrew Cuomo, who ran against Mamdani and lost, and now he's running again. You've got Eric Adams, who's the sitting mayor. So, in effect, he's running against Mamdani, and he also lost and continues to lose. He's losing big time. So, only one person that provides contrast there, and it's Curtis Sliwa. Now, I understand the critique some have given, including El Trompito, the president of the United States, the 45th and the 47th, El Presidente, saying he thinks Curtis Sliwa is a lackluster candidate. And to that, I say, look, he is the candidate that we have. And might I remind everyone, this is the same criticism they had for El Trompito. Oh, there's no way Trump could win. Oh, we're not going to elect. Donald Trump will not become president. Right? Remember all those clips? I remember them. I remember them saying, we're not going to elect a TV guy. We're not going to elect a real estate mogul from New York. There's no way Nancy Pelosi, Donald Trump will not become president of the United States. Not only did he do it twice, I would suggest he did it 3 times. Right? I voted for Trump 3 times. He should have won 3 times. And ultimately, this is that watershed moment that we're having in New York. In my opinion, we have to get this right. People have to get this right in New York because New York has suffered for too long. From the hands of the French fry eating communist sympathizer himself, Bill El Bobo de Blasio, to Eric Adams, who's had 2 police commissioners resign. Right? One because of an indictment, the other one because she felt she couldn't do her job. She was actually really good. Keishant Sewell. She was terrific. She was there for like 5 minutes and then she left. Why? Because she realized this guy's got my hands tied. Why? Because he's a puppet of the left as well. New York City being a sanctuary city, all that does is breed crime. Who's the one candidate running for mayor of New York that doesn't want it to be a sanctuary city? Oh, wait, Curtis Sliwa. Come on, people. Let's get this show on the road here. Anyway, that's what happened in New York. Then you've got a vigil. There was a vigil outside of the, not outside, at the Kennedy Center, the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., and this was in honor of the assassinated Charlie Kirk. And, of course, my thoughts and prayers with his family. I can't imagine how this is. I saw some video of his dad just breaking down at the sight of so many people there to pay tribute at a vigil, and no parent should have to bury a child. I can't give any advice there. I can't even wrap my brain around that. So my thoughts and prayers are with all of the Kirk family, and honestly, all of everybody at Turning Point USA, Tyler Boyer, the rest of the gang. This is a great bunch of people that really, really have done so much for our country, and are really suffering a big loss. And speaking of that, there's a couple of calls that I want to get to. One of them is from Daryl in Alexandria, Virginia. Daryl, I understand you were at the Kennedy Center. Is that right?
Rich, I was there. I was there with 4,700 of my closest friends. It was a packed-out show. I showed up early and waited in line about an hour. But I just want to clear up a couple things first. It was peaceful. There was love everywhere. I didn't see a single protester. They said there were some protesters there. I didn't see any of those. All I saw was a lot of love, and it was like going to church for the second time on Sunday yesterday. I mean, it was an amazing, amazing event. And what the TV, I just want to tell you a couple of my observations, if that's okay, because I had a front row seat to seeing, I mean, Caroline Levitt, the press secretary, Tulsi Gabbard, D&I director, and I used to work at D&I, and, I got to see Speaker Johnson. It was the first time that I'd seen some of these folks up close and personal. And let me tell you, when they went up there, they spoke from their heart. Most of them spoke without, or at least like the ones from Trump's cabinet, didn't really speak from notes. They spoke from their heart. And let me tell you, like RFK, when he spoke, no notes, extemporaneously, the crowd loved him. Chant, you heard on TV, right? You heard the USA, USA. It only came up for really 3 different of the speakers. RFK was one of them. Tulsi Gabbard was another one. And Speaker Johnson was another one. And let me tell you, so when I got there early, right, I was close to the front, and you got to see all the dignitaries come in, and there was talk about maybe Trump is going to show up and stuff like that. But there was only one that I saw that showed up before the event started and stayed until the very end, because 10 minutes before the event ended, most of the VIPs, they started leaving, right? Speaker Johnson stayed there the whole time, and I got the chance to watch him over in the corner. He was up in the balcony a little bit. He wasn't even on his phone. From my understanding, he's a real solid Christian man, strong believer, and he believes it from his heart. So when I heard him speaking about Charlie Kirk, and then I saw Speaker Johnson, really observe Charlie Kirk and pay attention to all the speakers. He wasn't on his phone, stayed there till the end. It's just like my congressman from Virginia, John McGuire. He stayed there till the end, shook hands with people.
I think it's a beautiful thing to see that, people took some time out of their schedule to come on a Sunday and on a Monday and whatever day of the week it is that they have to actually pay tribute, and that they're doing the right thing. It's always nice to see people pay their respects. It's nice for people to speak from the heart. I think it's a nice thing. Overall, there was a tribute in Jersey City, New Jersey. There was one in Manhattan by the New York City Young Republican Club. There's been so many of these memorial services and vigils that it really is touching. It's touching to see that people are doing that. There was one on a campus in Texas where, again, there are some people that come to protest or to be belligerent. But I think to your point, many people are there to truly just do the right thing. And it shows, again, the difference, the stark difference in the caliber of one's commitment to how they want to live their life. Most of us just want peace. And most of us are not assassins, despite some of the narratives that people have been talking about lately. So, Daryl, thanks for the call, brother. Shout out to WMAL, Alexandria, Virginia. Thank you, sir. And I want to give Santo a try again. Santo's also in Washington, D.C., WMAL. Santo, go right ahead.
Yeah, how you doing, Rich?
Wonderful, thank you.
Great. I'm calling just because, it's being in Washington, D.C. and just watching what's happening right now. I'm not going to play left or right here. I'm saying that in the United States, we have free speech. Mm-hmm. Free is a wonderful price. And unfortunately, in times, in different areas of the world, we abuse this freedom. With Charlie Kirk being assassinated, it's most unfortunate that you can't utilize a free speech to express thought and concept that someone would feel in such a way that they are being threatened to go to the extent of an extreme action of executing somebody. I know someone in the past who had the best of hearts in life, but never had the words to express their personal emotions. Because of that, it alluded to a lot of extreme actions. For those,
you're talking about the assassin?
Yes.
Yeah, like holding in all of those feelings and then just letting it explode into some horrible act of violence.
Absolutely. Either way, in either direction, if you do not possess the ability to be able to express freely, or just don't have the means to be able to advocate for yourself, and not, it's okay to we hear it all the time, it's okay to agree to disagree,
Yeah.
but not on the extreme that a name should be on a bullet. Neither party on any side in any case deserve that.
Well, Santo, the point here I think that you're making, and it sounds to me, is that free speech is always okay. You're right, even when we don't like it. What's not okay is murder, right? Murder's not okay. Assassinating someone's okay. Even punching people in the face. And listen, I don't call for that. I have oftentimes said that can be a consequence of what happens in life. But I've never told anybody to do that, unlike some of our friends on the left that constantly say they should punch people in the face. But my point in saying that is ultimately do what you got to do, say what you got to say. You don't like me, turn off the radio, listen to somebody else. That's always been my philosophy, and I welcome anybody who likes me or doesn't like me. I don't really care. You can call the show, and we can have the dialogue, because I think I agree with you. We have to talk more, right? Like Charlie Kirk would often say, we have to have these conversations. We can't begin to isolate ourselves where we say, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm no longer messing with you. And just because I may not go to lunch with you doesn't mean I won't have a conversation with you. Now, if the conversation goes left and, you want to get into some craziness, then, I have no choice but to end it at some point. But the bottom line remains, I'm willing to have a peaceful conversation most days. There's some days where, I need a lot of prayer. Santo, thanks for your call, brother. Godspeed to you. Shout out to WMAL. Straight ahead, I want to talk with somebody who had a relationship with Charlie Kirk. He worked for Turning Point USA. He is an ambassador for Jesus. He's a pastor. He just wrote a book, and the foreword was written by Charlie Kirk. I believe it's the final published work that Charlie Kirk has penned prior to his assassination, and we're going to do that straight ahead with Pastor Lucas Miles. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I'm so glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Hey, everybody. JD Vance here, live from my office in the White House complex and filling in for somebody who cannot be filled in for, but I'm going to try to do my best. My dear friend, the great Charlie Kirk. Every single person in this building, we owe something to Charlie. He was a joyful warrior for our country. He loved America. He devoted himself tirelessly to making our country a better place. He was a critical part of getting Donald Trump elected as president, getting me elected as vice president. Everyone knew him as this fearless debater, this guy who would take the conservative message into hostile places and inspire younger generations to have courage.
That, of course, Vice President J.D. Vance hosting a portion of the Charlie Kirk show today and sharing those words there. And I want to continue our conversation on this. As I mentioned before, the reaction to what's happening in America has been varied. I think largely most people are mourning. Some fringe of the country is celebrating the violence, celebrating the death and destruction. And many people are split on how do they react, how do they respond. We've had some discussion about that. I want to continue that discussion with Pastor Lucas Miles. He's the lead pastor of Influence Church in Indiana, and he's the senior director of Turning Point USA Faith. Pastor Lucas Miles, welcome, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to be with you as always, but I wish it was under better circumstances.
Yes, sir. I agree with you, brother. And folks, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that Pastor Miles wrote a book. He's written many, and we've had him on for all the books. And he's a terrific author, a great pastor, and a great American. But this most recent book that he's written is called The Pagan Threat, Confronting America's Godless Uprising with a Foreword by Charlie Kirk. And it's my understanding that this is the final written work that Charlie had put out prior to his unfortunate demise last week. Pastor Lucas Miles, talk to us about, what's going on with you and the reaction that you've been having with all of this craziness that's happened in the last several days?
Yeah, I was actually on vacation when I got the news. My wife and I were out of the country, and my assistant had called, and I knew that he wouldn't have called unless something had happened. And as soon as I saw the phone ring, my heart sunk. And I didn't even know why yet. And I answered the phone, and he said, "Charlie's been shot. It's serious." And we made arrangements immediately to get back to the U.S. and now been able to be with the staff in Phoenix. It's this one of the darkest periods of my life. I don't even know fully how to process it. As evil and as despicable and disgusting of an act that we witnessed this last week, I know that on the other side of this, that Charlie would be so blessed to see the revival that's happening across this country. So many pastors have been calling me, telling me their church doubled in attendance, that, how many salvations that they're receiving. I mean, there is truly a move of God that is happening, and what the enemy has intended for bad, God has certainly brought a ton of good out of that on the other side, which I'm grateful for. But we've got a lot of work still to do.
Yeah, amen to that. I agree with that. And I want to pick up on that, what you said, because I think you're right. I think we are in the midst of a revival in America, and not because of Charlie's death, his assassination, but I think because of his work and the work of many like him, yourself included, that have been out there pounding the pavement, making sure that you're telling the truth and fighting to make sure that truth is heard. And I think that is something that hasn't always been the case, right? There's always been the moral majority and the silent majority, but I feel like in recent years there's been a turn towards faith, a turns towards Jesus in particular, with for many reasons, and maybe you could enumerate on those when we come back from the break, as well as tell us about the book. And I think it's because of pagan threats, as you've called it in your book, that people are clinging to their faith more and saying, you know what, we've got to do the right thing here. And I think it's remarkable to see Generation Z not only becoming more conservative, but I think they're also becoming more filled with faith. So I want to get your thoughts on that and more. Let me remind the audience who we're speaking with. Folks, we're on with Pastor Lucas Miles. He's the lead pastor of Influence Church in Granger, Indiana. He's also senior director of Turning Point USA Faith and worked directly with Charlie Kirk. Even wrote a book called The Pagan Threat, Confronting America's Godless Uprising, and that foreword written by his boss, Charlie Kirk. When we come back, we're going to hear more about that and so much more. Pastor Lucas Miles, stick with us. Amigos, when we wrap that up, we're going to get to your calls, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Tonight at 11, an employee of Children's Healthcare of Atlanta is off the job tonight after making social media comments regarding Kirk's assassination. Now, what those comments were is not exactly clear, but the hospital did release a statement in response. A spokesperson telling Atlanta News First, quote, Children's Healthcare of Atlanta is aware of inappropriate comments made on social media by an employee yesterday. This type of rhetoric is not acceptable for children's employees and violates our social media policy. This firing just one of thousands across the country as it relates to social media comments surrounding the shooting of Charlie Kirk. Activists have created online websites to punish the people behind those messages. One site is called Expose Charlie's Murderers. Meanwhile, funeral plans have now been arranged for Kirk. The service will take place at 11 a.m. next Sunday at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. The organization Kirk founded, Turning Point USA is based in Phoenix. Air Force Two transported his casket to Arizona on Thursday.
All right, that was a report on what's going on across the country with so many people getting fired because of these ridiculous statements that they're making. And while that doesn't violate their constitutional First Amendment rights, it violates many companies' decorum requirements. So very interesting stuff to see. And I want to get some reaction to that, of course, from our guest. Our guest is Pastor Lucas Miles. He is the author of The Pagan Threat, Confronting America's Godless Uprising. The foreword to that book was written by Charlie Kirk himself. Pastor Miles, in addition to being the senior pastor at Influence Church in Indiana, is also the senior director of Turning Point USA Faith. Pastor Miles, I want to hear all about the pagan threat and your reaction to these people losing their jobs for saying the things that they're saying.
Well, look, absolutely. I mean, first off, Charlie understood the threat in this nation better than anybody. He has been warning and ringing the bell for so long that this is not about left versus right, red versus blue. This is about light versus darkness. This is about truth versus deception. And it's ultimately the pagan threat that killed Charlie. It is this, trans death cult. It is this just this Marxist obsession with just destroying and kind of burning down everything that's good. And you see these people, they cannot help but just, spew out this vitriol hatred for anything that does not, affirm their various, obsessions and just deception, really. And so this is the threat that we're up against. And it has been growing, I think, for a long time. Wokeism has shown its true colors, and they're pagan in nature. Christianity, for a time, was sort of the vehicle for the progressive message. It tried to, as a parasite, grab a hold of the church and use that as a way to platform Marxist ideology. But it was not a very good long-term vehicle. And it quickly showed that the principles of Marxism are antithetical to the gospel. And now Marxism has a new vehicle, and it is paganism.
Really well put. Pastor Miles, you've written a couple of other books on Marxism getting its way into the church. And here we are with this latest iteration, if you will, paganism. And talk to us about why you chose to highlight this particular societal ill in this latest book.
Yeah, there's about 1.5 million people right now that consider themselves practicing pagans. But ultimately, that's not really the real problem, although those divergent views certainly are concerning for people that might hold, more of a Christian worldview or really, believe in the principles and the values of Western civilization. The greater concern is, I think, this growing number of people that think that they're Christian or would say that they're Christian or there's some other faith, but they have embraced this sort of cult-like obsession with setting themselves up as God. The reason why Charlie Kirk was killed is because he made people face the fact that they are not the source of absolute truth. They are not the arbiter of truth. They're not the one who gets to decide what is good and what is evil, that there is a God who has established that, and they refuse to face that, and eventually it caused them to silence him. And Charlie understood the pagan threat better than anybody, and I was honored to have him write the foreword to this book. It's not the circumstances in which I wanted to release it. We'd actually had pushed back the release multiple times, and it was scheduled for today. And I hate that this is the conditions with which this book is being promoted, but in the same time, it is so timely because this is the thing that ultimately took his life. And I'm honored to continue that message with our work at TPUSA Faith. And if anybody wants to find out more about what we're doing, go to tpusafaith.com in order to stand with us.
Pastor Lucas Miles, talk to us a little bit about the work that you're doing at TPUSA Faith. Obviously, that's a separate division than the rest of the work that he's done on college campuses. But let us all know how intertwined it is and what the network and the work you're doing looks like.
Yeah, so I oversee the division that's TPUSA Faith, and our mission is first and foremost to eradicate wokeism from the American pulpit, and we're also trying to unite the church around primary doctrine. A lot of the confusion that we have in this nation is because we forgot some of the basic foundational truths of Christianity. If you look at something like the Apostles' Creed, which is a unifying statement for believers that we've held for, really, about 1,800 years, that is the foundational statement of that is that God, the Almighty God, is our creator. That's built into the very first stanza. When you know that God is your creator, you can get a right view about marriage, about sexuality, about your identity, about the sanctity of life. When you know God is the creator of life, it frames your beliefs about those individual issues. At TPUSA Faith, we are trying to come alongside pastors across this country. Before this last week, we had about 4,000 pastors that we were working with. We don't even know what the number is today. We have received so many requests from churches and clergy across this country. I have a feeling we're about to double or triple in growth, but it is our mission to make this the most Christian generation in America.
Well, amen to that. Talk to me about how you do it. What is the daily work look like, and how can this audience help you?
Yeah, so it's what's amazing is that through our generous donors, everything that we do for the church is free of charge, and that was really always Charlie's heart. And so we have about 40 staff members, part-time and full-time, and I have a feeling that's going to be growing very quickly across this country that call on local pastors, that lead faith groups, that put on different events, that respond to different needs that are out there. We have free courses. We distribute Rick Green's Biblical Citizenship. We have a brand new course that we just dropped that I do with Dr. Jeff Myers called First Truth, that looks at kind of what is primary doctrine and how can that help us navigate some of these social issues. So lots of resources. We do pastors' conferences. That's probably what we're most known for. We had one earlier this spring at Pastor Jensen Franklin's church with 1,800 pastors and faith leaders that attended that. So we're doing some incredible work, but I'll tell you, we are just getting started now, and we are more resolved than ever after losing Charlie.
Pastor Lucas Miles, final word to you, about a minute or two. Talk to me about what you say to so many passionate, caring, patriotic Americans that just don't know how to respond to this. Many of them are angry. Many of them want to fight back physically. Many of them are just, they've had it up to here. And my message to them, don't repay evil with evil, repay evil with good. But I don't know if that's falling on ears that are listening, sir.
Look, I understand all the various emotions that we have right now, and I think that we have to work through those and really push in the Lord. Charlie would say, go to church, spend time with your family, start navigating that. But I think we need a strategy. And in my book, Pagan Threat, that I was so honored to have Charlie endorse and write the foreword for, I have a 7-step plan at the end of the book that walks the church through how do we start taking ground back? How do we confront this pagan uprising that we're seeing? And I think that we have to take action. It's not enough just to sit back and hope it's going to get better. This should have been a wake-up call for every single American. What happened to Charlie could happen to any single one of us. He was a martyr. He died for standing up for the faith, and we're going to honor him, and we are going to create a strategy that's going to push back against this.
Outstanding work. Folks, that's Pastor Lucas Miles. The book is The Pagan Threat, Confronting America's Godless Uprising, with a foreword by Charlie Kirk. Pastor Miles, give them the website one more time where they go to get the book and follow your work.
Yeah, I encourage you to go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold. Pagan Threat, Confronting America's Godless Uprising by Lucas Miles.
Brother, I want to thank you for being here. Godspeed to you. Stay safe.
Thank you.
You bet. And amigos, your calls from Michigan, Vermont, Ohio, and more straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
fan. Your impact is really big. Honored to be here.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, Rich Valdez with you for a little bit longer. 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Linda, Kalamazoo, Michigan, streaming the show on KDKA. Go right ahead, Linda.
Hi, good evening, Rich. Couple observations. I'm not sure. Does this case with Robinson, in the fact that we are hearing that he is not cooperating, is he not entitled under the Miranda rights to not speak, or is there an exception here because of the fact that he actually had a confession? And if so, would he automatically go to trial, or would they, because he confessed, would they automatically be able to say he's guilty and institute the death penalty?
Yeah, well, no. Of course, he's within his constitutional rights to plead the Fifth, right? That's his Fifth Amendment right to not self-incriminate, and it looks like he's been doing that thus far. The government's still going to have to prove their case, and he's still innocent until proven guilty. I believe tomorrow he's going to be indicted, potentially arraigned, and so he'll be formally charged with aggravated murder, and then he will face court, where they're going to have a case that they're building against him with people from his own network, right? I mean, right now, all the cooperating people are his boyfriend, girlfriend, the transgender person that he's living with, his partner, if you will, his family members that encouraged him to turn himself in and assisted him with turning himself in, etc. So it seems like it's going to be a pretty solid case. FBI Director Kash Patel today was talking about how they have his DNA at the scene and on the murder weapon. So, I mean, it seems like most of the elements they have are pretty slam dunk. I don't know what his lawyer is planning for defense. I'm sure, just like many of the people that are on Twitter making the case that it was really a foreign government that killed Charlie. It was really this one. It was really the guy to the right of him. It was the guy in the crowd. It was, and again, I'm not, I don't know any of those things to be real. I know that Deputy Director of the FBI, Dan Bongino, has been making the rounds on the media today saying that there may be an extended network, potentially even of trans individuals that are looking to be a part of this. And the admission that he made on Discord went to whom. So they're tracking down all those people that received that message and seeing what role they play. But all that being said, it seems like there's still enough information there, evidence, I should say, to likely have a pretty slam dunk case against this individual, Tyler Robinson. So, yeah, I don't think he's going to lose any of his rights. He's going to have all his rights until he's convicted, and then he's going to lose his rights. Will likely be in jail for a little while before he faces the death penalty in Utah, which is by firing squad, which I'm pretty certain he's going to get. Linda.
The other thing that kind of struck me is the fact that the last question that Kirk was asked had to do with transgender. I did not see the interview or the speech or anything, so I had just heard that was the case. And you have to wonder, was that a planned question or was it just coincidence?
Right. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think I could have bet my money that most of the questions that Charlie Kirk was going to talk about had to do with gender ideology, had to do with political ideology, right? It was a very specific wheelhouse of questions that they were typically dealing with. He always came back down on the side of peace, on the side of his faith, on the side of limited government, on the side of liberty. So I don't know. I've also heard it reported that the person was supposed to be asking a question about transgender ideology and instead changed the question to gun violence. And I don't know. I don't know if that was part of the staging for this or not. I hope not, is what I'm going to say. But this is exactly what the FBI is looking into, seeing who in the crowd could potentially have been a part of this. So we'll keep everybody updated as we learn more about it. Linda in Kalamazoo, Michigan, streaming the show from KDKA. Thank you so much. And let me see. What do I do here? I'm going to do hold on. Let me see. There's another one here. Let's go to Paul. Paul's in Saskatchewan, Canada. Very quickly, Paul, KNXI. Go right ahead.
Hey, Rich. How are you this evening?
Wonderful, thank you.
I'm harvesting here. I listen to your show a lot, and I think it's a big wake-up call for the whole of North America, and especially us Canadians here too. But I want to add, no matter what a guy did, it's not right to do an execute.
You're 100% right, Paul. It's 100% wrong to execute anybody. And I appreciate you listening to the show every night. Sounds like you're on the road. If you're an over-the-road trucker, I appreciate you and the work that you do, because Lord knows I love to eat, and I don't eat unless some trucker brings something to the bodega or the Walmart or wherever you're going to buy your food. Paul, I got to take a pause here, but I thank you for your call and for your words of wisdom. We should not kill people. It's actually a commandment. Keep it locked right here. I'm coming back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. That Amazing Grace being sung at a vigil for Charlie Kirk. And I want to go to the phones. Daniel, Salem, Wisconsin, WLIP. Go right ahead.
Hi, Rich.
Daniel. Hi.
Just wanted to tell you that I'm very proud of you, how you're running your show, and very impressive.
Thank you,
You're
sir.
a very admirable man, by the way.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
No, and I mean it. But I was going to say, I think this thing with Charlie Kirk and this man that shot him, this 22-year-old, it's almost cultish. Like almost like the Manson, Charles Manson, you know, how they followed him and then they praised him, you know, all those years after they killed Sharon Tate.
Yeah, well, and you had this Luigi Mangione just a few months ago, and people were praising him for killing a healthcare executive, again, the radical left. And we have, sadly, as a culture, as a society, there's a portion of the people here that have normalized the killing of people. And look, I get it. I don't agree with it, but I understand why it's happening to some degree, right? And this is why I don't participate when it's on the other side. When people say, well, you know what, we should just do this or do that. This is why I've never been with the QAnon stuff, because ultimately there is a way to do things the right way and a way to do them the wrong way. And Lord knows I don't want to do them the wrong way. Daniel, Salem, Wisconsin, WLIP, thank you for the call. Paul in Zanesville, Ohio, you say the shooter was a lone wolf. Is that right? Paul?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm here. Can you hear me, Rich?
Paul, you're supposed to say yes. I do think he was a lone wolf. And I say, very good, Paul. I think you're probably right, but we'll see as they investigate. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez. Thanks, Paul.